Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel.
Boys and girls.
No, they're ladies and gentlemen. They're not girls and boys, okay? Ladies and gentle ducks, welcome back to the channel. I'm C.
I'm P.
And today we're going to react to a man named Thomas Sowell. Thomas Sowell. Thomas Sowell meets a feminist. This looks like it's from like old.
Who is he?
He's a smart dude. I think he's an academist. I think the people in the comments should know more than I do. But he's just smart dude who talk about some real smart shit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like another Jordan Peterson type.
Yeah, kind of like similar. But he was talking about these things like way in the past. Like based on the quality of this video, you can tell it was a while ago. So we're gonna see if they had the same problems that we have now, but back in the past. But I'm guessing to a lesser extent.
What about
they had
feminists?
Yeah, it says feminist, so I'm guessing. Feminists existed like in the past, but I don't know if it was as bad or if they're using the same talking points, same talking points like as they do now. So I guess we're gonna find out. All right, ready?
Yeah.
Doctor, let's hear from our examiner. We have with us. Doctor, let's hear from our examiner. We have with us Mrs. Harriet Pilpel, who's well known to this viewers of this program. Mrs. Pilpel is an attorney with Greenbaum, Wolf and Ernst, a graduate of Vassar and of the Columbia Law School, and very active in a number of liberal and feminist movements. Mrs. Pilpel.
I would like to ask both of you, if I may, the same question. Both of you seem agreed that in the 1950s, Harvard and Yale excluded blacks and...
Look at that. There were attorneys in the past. So, feminists are saying that, in the past, women weren't allowed to do anything at all. But look at that. She's an attorney.
Depends on how far in the past you're talking about.
Seem agreed that in the 1950s, Harvard and Yale excluded blacks and Jews and were...
30s.
30s?
Yeah.
Excluded blacks and Jews. And in fact, in another program, Bill, you said that you think it's the other way today, that Harvard and Yale discriminate against Anglo-Saxons.
Well, to the extent that they believe in affirmative action, they would necessarily have to discriminate
I
against
would like
somebody.
to know what you think changed this attitude from discrimination against blacks and Jews to, in Bill's opinion anyway, the opposite extreme.
May I?
Yes.
I don't see it as a change of attitude. I see it as a change of whose ox is gored. And the change is simply a political change in the larger society. It's cheaper for non-profit organizations to discriminate, no matter who they discriminate against. Therefore, you would expect them to be in the forefront of discrimination, whether it is direct discrimination or reverse discrimination. And that's largely what you find.
Well, you're saying that it was to their advantage to discriminate against blacks and Jews before, and now it's
it was
the
never.
other way?
It was never to their advantage to do so, except insofar as they simply had prejudices which they were able to indulge. I'm saying that whatever they do, discrimination costs them a lot less than it costs someone in a competitive industry. Highly competitive industries, for example, sports and entertainment, have typically been much more open than much more closed-in kinds of non-competitive things like public utilities and non-profit organizations, foundations, universities, hospitals, and so on.
What would you do to help those blacks who are still in a very low economic condition in terms of education, for example? There are, as you said, many blacks today who are still being given totally inadequate education, cannot be expected to get very far for that reason. What would be your remedy for that?
I know.
That's very easy. I would allow their parents to have a choice of where to send them to school, whether that choice is called a voucher scheme, open enrollment, tuition tax credit, any kind of scheme of that sort that would put that power in the hands of their parents. Mainly because that would mean that the schools would have to be responsive to them. As it is now, the school is a monopoly. They need not be responsive. I have relatives right here in New York whom I've had to intervene for because the schools would not even treat them decently, much less give them access to the information they wanted that they were entitled to under the law.
If you put it...
It's funny because this program is actually still going on right now, where you are locked by your district. So if you live in this district, you cannot send your kid to a school in another district.
Yeah.
Right? And because of that, they're saying that in the black community, all the black kids are stuck in that district. And the schools in the cities, the schools like who are like in those kind of neighborhoods, they're not known for giving those kids a good education.
Yeah, but that's parents, more for like younger schools, not so college like.
Yeah.
But what he's talking about is college, because he's talking about Harvard and Yale. Harvard, Yale's colleges. They're not.
No, but you're saying what? I think he's talking about like everything.
Really?
Right.
Oh, okay.
Well, even if it's not. But there's a fight going on right now where like those parents cannot send their kids to a school that's like outside of the area because they're stuck in that district. There's a recent story about like a school board member or whatever that sent her kid to a private school, but saying that everybody else have to send their kids to like a school that that's in the district. But because she can afford it, she sent the kid to private school. But most people in that community cannot afford to send their kids to private school, and they also aren't allowed to send their kids to a different school in another district. So they're like stuck in that district. So even like now, this thing is still going on, even though
Yeah.
It's been a while.
And that affects a lot of the kids because every district is not equipped with all the same things.
Exactly.
Like books and computers and all that. So like if you're gonna force kids to stay within their district, I'm talking about public schools only, because private schools is a different realm. Yeah. If you're gonna force them to stay in their districts, then you should make sure that every public school has the same opportunities.
Also, I think what they're afraid of is like it becomes like a capitalism thing, because if your school is not good, everybody's gonna send the kids to a different school.
Yeah.
And what happens? Your school gets less funding. So at the end of the day, it's all about money. The reason they're not allowed that is because if the kids have to come to your school, then you don't gotta try as hard to give them a good education because they can't leave anyways. You know what I'm saying?
Also like competitive, because like for me, when I was in school, my high school was known as one of the best high schools on Long Island because they were very competitive with other schools. But I feel like for public schools, unless it's like colleges, you shouldn't be competitive. It should just be about the kids getting the education that they need. And if you do it that way, you could even out the board and make sure every school has the equipment that they need, the books that they need, etc., etc.
But the point is, if it's not comparative, that's what's happening right now. Then what's stopping the school just from just being like a bad school? If kids have to come to your school, you don't have to try as hard to give them a good education. But if you are comparative, that school is doing better than your school, other kids will go into that school, you are forced to give your kids a better education because then you get less funding. I think that's why competition is actually good, because it forces everybody to.
Schools that don't have the money to be able to put into their school to make it better, like
but
like the majority
kids,
of black communities.
Kids have to, that's what I'm saying. If the schools get funding.
Well, I'm saying that there's schools that don't have the proper material that they need.
Yeah, but why force kids to go to that school if the school don't just close that school down and?
But like you said, because you're stuck in that district.
So that's what I'm saying. If we open the districts, then they become competitive. Then that school have to compete with all the other schools.
Okay,
that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Hands of the parents, and the parents are themselves uneducated. And not really aware of what the various potentials are. What makes you think that they would decide more intelligently than the present system?
I think, again, history. As blacks emerged from slavery, a minute percentage could read or write, and yet in half a century, over half the black population was literate. An economic historian has called that one of the most remarkable things in history. If you look back to the era prior to the Civil War, when there were free blacks about 500,000 in the United States, they not only were not allowed in the public schools, they were in some states forbidden even to send their children to private schools and had to do so clandestinely. And yet the census of 1850 showed that most free blacks could read and write. So I don't think that the fact that people have little education means that they are in any way poorer judges than distant bureaucrats.
Real quick, a lot of people confuse education with being smart. those are not mutually exclusive. You can be smart and not be educated, and you can be educated but not smart. You know what I mean? Because education is basically you learn a bunch of stuff, memorize a bunch of stuff. But somebody can be smarter than you and learn that stuff and have the time, and and be smarter than you. They're not mutually exclusive.
Also, you have to realize you're talking about parents here. You could get the dumbest parent there is, but they're still going to fight to make sure their child has the best education that there is.
Because no one cares about their kids better than the parents do.
Exactly.
Some board member halfway across the country.
So it doesn't matter if the parent is smart or not. It's just what matters is how much the parent cares about the child.
I think what she's talking about is education. I don't think she knows.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, her point, she's saying how if parents aren't as educated as the school system, then how are parents going to know what's best for their children? Parents know what's best for their children just because of the fact that it's their children.
Yeah,
you know
they
what I'm
care about
saying?
them more than
You're with the child every single day. You know what their strengths and weaknesses are. So you know, okay, this school that's prone for their mathematics is going to be great for my son because he's really good with numbers. You know what I mean?
Who have their own access to grind and run the public school system.
But you yourself said that you thought one of the reasons why blacks were still in an underprivileged position, those who still are, was because they had not been given a proper education. And we are now talking about people who had not been given a proper education, making decisions for their children as to what is a proper education. And you're saying that if that was put up to them, they would make a wiser choice than the present efforts to integrate the schools.
Let me say that if they would not make a very different choice, it would be hard to understand the hysterical opposition of teachers' unions to giving them that opportunity.
Well, I have no comment on that, but I would like to know how Bill feels about improving educational opportunities.
I believe with Dr. Sowell that the voucher system obviously encourages parents to use the same kind of selectivity that's available to parents who have enough money to send their children to private schools, and that to give a versatility of choice, a flexibility of choice to parents of poor children, the same versatility that is given to parents of wealthier children is obviously desirable.
And you think that their ability to make the decision is equal?
No, but I think it may be equal, it may be less equal, it may be more equal. I think that the phenomenon of the poor and uneducated parent who seeks for his or her children what he himself has never achieved for himself is much more commonplace.
Oh God, yes.
Than the kind of sated, self-satisfied parent who typically neglects the education of his child.
That's fast.
100%.
A lot of time parents want better for their kids. They're saying that that's why I think a lot of parents who actually made a name for themselves, they actually became rich. They were born poor and they became rich. They usually spoil their kids because they want their kids to be better off than they were. Because of that, if a parent was not educated, he's gonna want to try as much as possible to make a better road for their kid. So they're gonna do some research and figure out the best school for their kid. I think that's why the parent decide, the parent's gonna do the diligence to make the best decision for their kid, not some board member halfway across the country who don't really care about
you don't realize how smart a parent can be in regards to their children. Like I was watching, it was funny, I was watching a TikTok video and this guy was saying this guy was saying how his mom, he grew up poor and his mom was a single mother. The mom couldn't afford daycare. The mom saw a sign for unlimited karate, only $100 a month from the hours of 3 to 8. She had that kid in karate from 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock. She didn't have to pay for a daycare system. The kid learned how to learn proper skills, how to protect himself and how to be disciplined, better than he would even if he was in a daycare system.
Education is not.
So like she wasn't educated, but she
was smart.
Did this, and she also did the math because she's like, if I have him in here for this amount of hours, I'm only paying $2 an hour for him.
But in daycare, I'd be paying way more.
Exactly. So you know what I mean? She had no education, so she was able to sit down and do all of that thinking and working out those solutions so her child can achieve.
Yeah.
Without her holding them back because she's in that situation that she's in.
I think you'd have very few blacks who finished college, including myself, if they had to have college-educated parents to send them there. There was no one in my family that went to college before me, and among the blacks that I know of my generation, I would say that's the rule rather than the exception.
My son, the doctor syndrome.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that insofar as your own experience is concerned, you are clearly an exceptional person. And it is somewhat reminiscent of what the minister...
Okay, this made me seem like he's saying that most black people are not smart like he is. I think that's what she's trying to say. Yeah, that works for you because you're exceptional. But other black kids, I don't know. That's why I was getting from him that. But maybe I'm wrong. Because he was saying that happens with most of the black kids around him, and she's saying, yeah, but you're exceptional. And
the guy was kind of trying to bring that all together in a better way, because he said, yeah, it's the same thing as my son has to be a doctor syndrome. So like he was comparing it the right way, where she like kind of was trying to make a stab almost.
I think that insofar as your own experience is concerned, you are clearly an exceptional person. And it is somewhat reminiscent of what the Minister for Women's Affairs said in France when she was asked whether there was going to continue to be a Ministry of Women's Affairs now that women had achieved such great strides forward. Her answer was, as long as the average woman does not have the same opportunities as the average man, we need to have a government office which will try to get them some sort of equal opportunity.
But it's precisely the government which is denying it in this case. It's the government which has been running these schools from which the kids graduate semi-literate. And for years, black parents have been sending their kids, not just me, but a whole generation of blacks, to college, to high school, whatever. If you look at the history of black education in the United States, that has been largely, at the beginning, an effort by the blacks themselves. It was 1916 before there were as many blacks attending public high school as were attending private high schools. So there's a very long history of blacks trying to get their kids educated. I might say from my experience, again, not my own story, but at black colleges, the parents who work nights and fathers drive cabs and mothers who scrub floors to see that their kid gets an education. If there weren't such people, you wouldn't see half as many blacks with college degrees today.
And they're beating down the doors of Catholic parochial schools, even non-Catholic blacks, to get in there.
Yes.
What percentage would you say of the total number of blacks were in private schools or beating down the doors of parochial schools? Would it not be a considerably less than half percentage?
That's right, because they don't have the money. And you could have made exactly the same argument against the GI Bill, that why should you have a GI Bill for people to go to college when only the rich go to college? Well, the reason the rich were the only ones going to college at that time was because there was no GI Bill. The whole point of this is to put this choice within their hands. It is hard for me to understand what harm is going to be done by allowing parents to have a choice as compared to having self-interested bureaucrats have a monopoly.
That's what I was saying.
Well, I think that your notion of parents having a choice overlooks the tremendous degree of family disorientation which exists in all communities, including the black community.
Single mother families, a single mother has the same incentive to send her kid to the best school she can get him into as any other parent.
Facts.
There are, of course, many children, particularly of high school age, who are totally disassociated from their parents.
That's true. I think that would be a considerably less than half, too, to use your phrase.
I would like to, for a moment, ask you some questions about the economics of job getting in terms of the blacks versus the whites. The statistics I was able to pull together indicate that at the present time, white males make $17,427 on an average basis for the year. Black males make
12,000. Oh my God, that's so long ago. $17,000 a
Could you
year.
imagine?
The average person. It's funny because it hasn't gone up by that much. The average is like, I think, less than 40K a year for the average man. It didn't go up by that amount. The inflation has gone up, but the wages hasn't gone up by that much.
12,738. White females make 10.
Let me go back to that.
Black males make 12,738.
So,
White females make 10,244, and black females make 9,476. It is clear from these figures, as indeed I think it's clear to most of us from what we see, that there is a discrimination against blacks and against women in our present system. Since not all blacks will be superior, how would you try to even that out so that there would be some equality of job opportunity?
Before she started, this sounds to me like the wage gap, where they like put everything together without doing individual,
The actual,
differences. Just put
instead of
together.
breaking it down.
Yeah.
Because you're looking at the statistics at a whole, but when you go into the deep root of this question, you kind of have to break down every spectrum.
But let's see if it's the same thing.
See, I'm sorry you missed the earlier part of the program when I pointed out that where you find people not represented evenly, that does not show the institutional effect, because almost nowhere in human affairs do you find people evenly represented. If you compare comparable people with respect to age, with respect to education, etc., you get a totally different picture, both with respect to blacks and women. Now, the figures that I saw, for example, show more recently that if you take black families where the husband and wife are both college educated and compare them to a white family where the husband and wife are both college educated, the black family is now earning $2,000 a year more. The problem is that very few blacks fall in that category. That when you compare category for category, then we're talking about getting people a decent education. I'm saying that you cannot say that numbers collected at the employer's place of business reflect simply the employer's policies. Those numbers reflect underlying conditions in the whole society, just as numbers collected at a hospital do not show you that the people are sick because they're in the hospital.
See, yeah, I think it's the same as the wage gap. It's been happening like even in the past, where if you maybe back then most African Americans weren't college educated, right? And because of that, they earn less, but everybody else, like the whites, were, so they were able to get better jobs because they were college educated. I mean, but we can go down and figure out why they're not college educated, but we could not say there's like discrimination because whites earn more than blacks, you know what I mean? But what's the reasons behind it? It's like even the females too. Like white females earn less than black men back then too in that thing. Why is that? You know what I mean? It's not just that simple just to like the wage gap to just take an average of like everybody's wages and just like say there's discrimination.
No, I would agree with that, but you would also have to agree that generally speaking, women are paid less, for example, for the same jobs as men.
No, I would not.
It's like the same exact talking point as
Nothing has
as
changed
now.
in how
That's
many
crazy.
years? Nothing has changed.
It's the same talking. How old was this? It's the same talking point. Like said exactly the same.
Same way.
Like exactly the same way. That's crazy. That's crazy.
They're in the
I know he was going some. I know that's where he was going. It sounded that's where he was going. It sounded like that. But I didn't know it was gonna be the exact same
line.
phrasing. Yeah, that's crazy.
hospital.
No, I would agree with that, but you would also have to agree that generally speaking, women are paid less, for example, for the same jobs as men.
No, I would not. I would not agree with that. If you're talking about women with the same number of years of experience, with the same continuous service, etc., then when I look at that, I don't find that disparity. I find, for example, in many cases, the women are making more, depending on how you break the data down.
That's even true now. Oh, how old was this? That's even true now.
Because you have to talk about the exact same job, the exact same experience, and then look at the outcome.
And when they do that, women earn more than men actually.
You
but
can't look at the spectrum because it's not accurate. Because not all women are mechanics. Not all women are working on computers. Not all women are working in sewers. So you can't
do that. Oh my God, it's same
that disparity. I find, for example, in many cases, the women are making more, depending on how you break the data down. The difference with women is between married women and everybody else. That's the real difference.
Well, even as to single women, the Census Bureau statistics, the most recent ones I could find, 1978, say that single men are earning $11,100 and single women are earning $9,300.
Yes, I love the word single that is used. When I did my study, I didn't use single, I used never married. You see, a woman who is single at age 40, having spent 10 or 20 years raising children, is really not quite the same as a man of age 40 who's been working continuously for 20 years.
That's facts.
And the differential she cited is not that great, so it could easily be accounted for by the point
Yes,
you
because when I
raised.
break them down the other way, I did this for the academic world, and there I found the women who are never married, which is the term the way I take it. There they were earning more than the men. And similarly, when the government did data some years ago on women who had been working continuously since high school into their 30s, there you found that they were making slightly more than men of the same description. So the difference is between married women and everybody else. And married men get an extra bonus because their wives take care of many things that enable them to put more time into their careers.
I'm sure you're aware of the fact that there are approximately 15% of all homes in which there is only one wage earner. So that when you talk about women being able to take care of things for their married mate wage earner, the fact is that in the overwhelming majority of American homes, the women also work. And therefore, I don't think your explanation that women have other responsibilities and that that's why they are...
Work can mean part-time work or full-time work. Women do not work full-time to the same extent that men. Part-time workers make less than full-time workers.
Yeah, also, a lot of women, more men work full-time than women. I mean, a lot of men work part-time, most men work full-time. Also, that's another thing you have to look at when you're looking at the wage gap. Yeah. Part-time and full-time work. Because women work less hours than men in general. So you have to take that into account.
Even if they are working full-time hours, men are more likely to stay longer if asked. Men are more likely to come in earlier if asked. Women have to juggle more in the household, especially married women. Married women with or without kids, we're juggling more, so we can't work as many hours as the man can. The man can work those hours because they don't have to make sure that the house is clean, make sure that there's food on the table, make sure that the kids are getting ready for school, make sure the kids get to the bus on time, help the kids out with the homework. For us to be able to do all that and work as hard and long as men do, something is going to fall through the cracks. Either our kids aren't going to get the education that they need because I'm not home helping them, or they're going to be eating takeout every night, or the house is going to look like a pigsty. You know what I mean? Yeah, unless you're that wealthy where you can have a home tutor, a maid, a cook, and be able to work if you felt like it with your husband working, then you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think most women tend to pick the family
over the job.
And most men usually pick the job
over the family
because that's the way a man takes care of his family, by working, right? So the men tend to do that more, and women take care of the family by being at home, take care of the kids, make sure everything's fine.
And I want to clarify that it's most, because a lot of people will bring in the exception.
I have the exception. I know this one lady who does that.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the majority. Yeah. The majority of women would rather stay at home.
I think majority of women will either stay at home or work part-time. And because most women are not like, my God, I'm going. Most people are not happy to go to work. You know what I mean? But at least men.
Unless it's like the job of their dreams. Like
exactly.
If you have a person.
How many people work the job of their dreams? You know what I mean? So
that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're a person that literally was like from high school, was like, this is the job that I want, and I'm gonna go to college and study and get a degree for this job, and I'm gonna work hard for this job, then it's different versus somebody that's just trying to make money to survive.
But that's not most people.
Yeah.
May I ask a question about unemployment? The latest figures I saw indicated that of black youth, something like 46% of those who wanted jobs were unable to get jobs. I really would like this time to ask both of you to respond to what would you do in that situation. If you would assume for a moment that these are people who do want jobs and are unable to find work.
I would, first of all, repeal the minimum wage law, because if you go back to, say, 1950, 1948, 49, 50, you find that at that time, the unemployment rate among black teenagers was a fraction of what it is today. And there certainly wasn't any less racism then than there is today. What was different was that at that time, the minimum wage law was a decade old. It was a decade of inflation, and the law hadn't been changed. So for all practical purposes, it didn't exist.
But don't you think that was also a decade of expansion in which there were a lot of jobs, whereas today our economy is in a recession and there are not that many jobs
available? If you look at the most prosperous years of the 60s and 70s, you don't find black teenage unemployment as low as it was in the recession year of 1949.
Well, I don't know what the job situation was then, but it's only recently that we have reached
I was a black teenager in 1949.
Did you get a job?
It was a recession year, and after considerable looking, I found a job. But the point is, the kid who was living where I lived then, who's living there now, he has a hell of a lot harder time finding that job because there are so many good people who have tried to do good for him and priced him right out of the market.
Well, facing the situation as it presently exists, what would you do for that 46%?
If the situation is going to remain as it presently exists, the results will remain
No,
as
I'm
it presently
saying
exists.
now, today, what would you do to help
I would
this 46%?
repeal those things which
But
is
that isn't going to help
demonstrably-
these 46%, is it?
Nothing.
Something has
do you
to be
want?
done
Do
about
you
that.
want to change it, or you want to leave it the same? If you want to leave it the same, everything will continue the same. If you want to change it, it'll change.
No, I think that your suggestions of change contemplate that in the future, the situation will be different. But I'm asking you about the 46% of black youths who are now unemployed, who probably would not be affected by changing the law this year.
You can say that all you want, but the evidence is totally against you.
May I add this datum, just out of respect to Mr. George Keller, who is the assistant to the president of the University of Maryland, who writes in the New York Times, 28 January 1981, quote, "In fact, overwhelming numbers of young blacks are in high school, college, at work, in the military, or at home taking care of babies. The percentage of blacks between 16 and 19 looking for a full-time job and unable to find one is actually 7.8%.
Well, I can't just resolve, perhaps you
According to
can.
Did
calculations
she say
based on...
45?
7 point.
No, what did she say? She said about a 40 something. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. But 40 to 7 is a big difference. So I don't know where somebody went wrong with those statistics, but
Bureau of Labor Statistics data.
A similar figure was printed some years ago in Wattenberg's book, The Real America. A lot of those big numbers come from looking at kids who would like to have a job after school, which is fine, and I think it'd be better if they had more jobs after school. But those numbers don't relate to what we're talking about when we talk about adult unemployment.
Well, what would you say about the present 8% overall unemployment figure? That also is a lot of people who are looking for part-time jobs, or is that a general figure that indicates that we have a great many unemployed in this country?
There
Because
are a great many unemployed. One of the reasons being that we've had the kind of economy we've had for some time now, and all attempts to get the inflation out of it are likely to have these adverse effects. It's tragic. However,
should we warn her that you wrote a book about Sayers Law?
well, I should, no.
No, I am concerned about what we do for people who are presently in a very disadvantaged position because of what's happened in
We
the
try to
economic
remove
crash.
as many of the barriers as possible that have put them in that position.
And you think the barriers that have put them in that position are, for example, a minimum wage law?
Minimum wage laws, labor unions, occupational
Would you
licensing.
abolish labor unions?
Huh?
Would you abolish labor unions?
You don't have to abolish labor unions. I'm saying that if you're asking me what are some of the things that have done it, I'm giving you some of the things that have done it.
before I go to speak on labor union, I think it's good and bad, right? Because sometimes like everything can be good and bad.
Yeah.
Like have you heard about the UPS? Is it UPS drivers who's getting paid like 100K a year, like 6 figures?
Oh yeah.
They're driving
I heard
trucks.
of that. Yes.
And I think a lot of people are saying, yeah, it's good for the unions, it's good for the people, they're getting paid. Yeah, but you're not looking at it deeply enough. How is UPS going to pay each driver 100K plus a year?
They're gonna have to probably let some other people go.
Not even that, they're going to raise prices,
Yeah.
right? So that wage is coming down to you.
Us.
UPS not going to pay that wage. What they're going to do is just put the prices up, and we got to pay more for the packages. People don't look at it right that way because most people don't really think about economics. They only think about the surface level thing. Oh, they get paid 100K a year.
It's very
That's great.
similar to the taxes, like how, for example, our tax money is going towards the abortion clinics and stuff like that. I heard a girl talking about that on TikTok as well. She was saying,
Slash TikTok.
well, you see a lot of
Yeah.
things like this on
Yeah,
there.
my point is like most people don't think about things deeply enough. Because
Yeah.
all they hear is like, oh, they're getting paid 100K plus a year. That's great for them, right? Yeah, it's great for the truck drivers, shoot. But for everybody else, it's not. Because then those prices are going to trickle down to us because we got to pay more to deliver packages so they can pay them that kind of money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
This reminds me a lot of that Jordan Peterson skit because like it's the same kind of banter is going back and forth and like the same kind of dumb questioning instead of listening to what the person's saying, you're asking like
I think she already came with like a
that kind of mindset.
with a narrative.
Just like
She's not
that,
trying to listen.
What's her name?
Kathy, was it Kathy Newman?
Yes,
Yeah.
did to Jordan
To
Peterson.
Peterson,
It's
yeah.
very funny because it's like history
The
repeating
change,
itself.
Yeah, right. Isn't that what they say? Those who don't start a history are doomed to repeat it.
Yep.
Yep.
Blacks were well represented in many occupations, skilled occupations in the South 2 or 3 generations ago to a greater extent than today. Because 2 or 3 generations ago, those industries were not unionized. Construction, railroads, just classic examples. When we have this so-called Philadelphia plans to get blacks into the construction industry, I mean, it would be laughable if it weren't so tragic. Blacks were heavily into the construction industry before it was unionized.
Well, again, I come back to the here and now. Assuming that they are not heavily in the construction industry now, what would you do to cure it? Because I do think
I would do away with or otherwise mitigate the effects of those things that are keeping blacks out of those industries.
Forgive me, but he has said that 3 times.
He just said it too. I was just saying, how many times does he have to answer the same question with the same response and she keeps answering it? The guy was just about to say before he paused it, how many times does he have to say it?
I was gonna, if that was me, if that was her, I was gonna ask him, what about the unions or keeping the blacks away from the construction now? What do the unions do
to keep
to
them
keep
away?
them out?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then,
But
so
she doesn't care about that. She doesn't.
That's where I would go. Where the problem is, I'll try to fix the problem there. Because once the unions came, the blacks went out. What happened there?
What happens now in a lot of debates like these, which is still happening today, you're not going into debate to try to find a solution
to listen and learn and try
or to learn about things that are going on in the world. You're debating to be like,
I'm right.
I'm right. This is my point. I'm right. I'm gonna show you that I'm right.
Whatever you say, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. You can give me facts. I'm still right. And I want to show that you're dumb. I want the world to see that you're stupid. That's pretty much what it is.
Now, what would you do to cure it? Because I do think
I would do away with or otherwise mitigate the effects of those things that are keeping blacks out of those industries.
Forgive me, but he has said that 3 times.
Well, he has not taken up the cause of those people who would not be immediately affected by changing those laws. In addition to
the acoustics must be very bad in here.
He can't create entirely.
He's just like Jordan Peterson. Can you see him saying some shit like that? He'd be like,
oh my God.
Oh my God.
Receive more money than he is now making, and to say that somebody should receive more money than he is now making and to pass a law to that effect is not in fact to give him a job for more money. It may very well be to cause unemployment.
I gather that there are many instances where the minimum wage provisions have been waived or do not apply, where the employers have nonetheless not taken advantage of it. So I don't know what empirical
I'm not sure of that at all. I know that there are provisions of the law under which, if you're willing to go through enough red tape, you can get certain exemptions. Particularly for the person who's hiring 1 or 2 people, he may decide that it's just not worth his while.
Would it be your feeling that if all the affirmative action programs were discontinued, women and minorities would go ahead much faster than they have under the affirmative action program?
Yes, it's not my opinion. The data indicate that, for example, Puerto Ricans had a higher percentage of the national average income before quotas than after. So did Mexican Americans. Blacks have about the same. So there's a marvelous putting of the burden on other people. You're saying here's this massive program that has existed now for a decade, and you're unable to show me the benefits that have come from all this enormous controversy.
Well, it certainly has been a revolution insofar as women's participation in the labor force.
Not really. Not really. No, it hasn't. No,
I know that of my own knowledge.
No, you don't know it of your own knowledge because I've also looked at the same thing. And in the past, you found women overrepresented in many professional occupations, much more so than today. And you find that decline in those occupations much more highly correlated with a lower age of marriage for college women and with more childbearing. And as those two things, those 2 demographic factors have changed, women have also changed in their representation. So this whole myth that's been created that this is all a function of political developments of the past decade or so just will not stand up.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Pilpel, and thank you very much, Dr. Thomas Sowell, author of Ethnic America, A History, and Markets and Minorities, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
One thing I want to say about something I recently learned, but something that I started to think deeply about is we all want the minimum wage to go up, right? Mm-hmm. And we understand why everybody wants that, but the people that hurts the most is the small business owners, right? And they apply on a lot of people, like Walmart, Amazon. Those people, they don't care if the
wages go up.
You know what they're gonna do? hack the prices up.
Yeah.
That's it. So they don't care.
Or
But
get rid of a bunch of people.
Exactly.
Like they've been doing.
But the small business owner who can afford to pay those employees that much money, they go out of the business.
Yeah.
And what's gonna happen? Those big companies are gonna buy the small businesses.
Yep.
And what's gonna happen? We give more control to the big businesses.
It's
Then
the
they can
same
do
thing that
whatever they
happened,
want.
like, during COVID.
COVID, yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody, you're getting these checks. Where you was spending it? Giving it back to those big other businesses.
Yeah.
Right? And they getting
And all the small
richer.
ones were closed down. All
Exactly.
the small ones were suffering. All those people that were working in those small businesses were suffering. It's just.
Yeah, and it's like people don't think about this thing deeply enough.
No.
And I understand people got things to do. They ain't got time to think about everything at all times. But there are certain things.
But what they don't realize is
That
that
you
it
gotta
does
think about.
affect them. You know,
Of course.
A lot of people think, oh, I don't have time to be thinking about these things because I have more pressing issues in my life that are happening.
Are you
But
sure
you
about
don't
that?
realize
You
that
know?
these issues are affecting you. And if they're not affecting you right now, they are definitely going to affect you in the future and your kids in the future. So if you don't start thinking about it now and start talking about it now and start trying to make changes now, if you're not going to be affected, your kids are going to be affected.
And it's that saying that says you're gonna suffer. You're gonna be affected either way. Either if you do nothing, you're gonna be affected in a negative way,
Yeah.
right? So why not learn about certain things so you can make the best decision for yourself?
And your family.
It's not finances.
Because the majority of people that are working so hard, that are studying so hard, that are craving this amount of money, you're doing it for your family. You're doing it for that legacy, right? So why not learn as much as you can for the same reasons? To me, that makes no sense. You
Yeah,
know?
I'm learning about these things now, and it's like those the small businesses is what keeps the country, growing and alive. If we give the power to all the big businesses, like the individual don't have the power anymore because they're gonna all have monopolies.
And we're
in their
all
hand.
guilty of
You know what I
it.
mean?
We
Yeah,
all
we're all
shop
guilty
at
of it.
Walmart and Amazon.
Yeah.
I do it all the time.
I'm just gonna give you that to the delivery.
Right?
You know what I mean?
Or that free shipping too.
Exactly. I mean, we're all guilty of it, but we all gotta realize that that's because most people don't know about these things, right? And also, they make everything so easy for you. It's harder to go to like a small business and to go to the big ones. But we are actually dooming ourselves because we're giving them, a lot of the power.
I actually miss when I was younger. There used to be like those strip malls. You ever heard of
They're
them?
done now. No, I've never
Where you it would be outside and you would walk down and there'll be like different types of stores instead of having a giant mall. I used to love that. You'd be going in and out of stores, like window shopping, buying things that you see. It's the same thing like when you go to like a flea market because like you're not necessarily looking for these things, but then you happen to fall upon things that are like very interesting and unique. You don't find that when you're scrolling through Amazon and Walmart.
Yeah, even the big like strip malls where you go inside and it's like a bunch of stores inside you buy stuff. A lot of them are abandoned.
When I
because
went
everybody's buying online now.
When I went on vacation to what's it called? I always forget the pronunciation.
Curacao?
Yeah, when I went to Curacao, they had those like little boutiques and stuff like that, and I found like and I brought some stuff home with me like handmade jewelry. And I actually saw the women like making it right in front of me and hand painted like dishes and stuff like that. Like those are very unique things.
What you do now, you order it from China, then you drop ship it, put it on Amazon, and charge double the price for it on Amazon. That way you get rich from the side.
Yeah,
So
that's what I'm saying. Like it's just so instead of you like those experiences are so like different than scrolling through a screen and looking at Amazon. You know what I mean?
Also, like capitalism has good and bad things on it. I think it's the best like thing we have right now. Everything else we try to didn't work, but it also is good and bad because of capitalism, we're not like you said, we're not making those handmade things anymore because there's not as much profit in it.
Yeah.
We can mass sell a bunch of stuff you bought from China for the cheap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's not much profit into it. But yeah, guys, we're talking too much here. End of the video. We went way, different than what the video was. All over the place.
But like that's why we love videos like these because it gets you thinking, it gets you talking, and I would personally love to do more videos like these.
Maybe we should do more Thomas Sowell, I like him. He's giving me Jordan Peterson vibes.
Right?
You know what I mean?
It's like the old Jordan Peterson, how do they say, like, you're
Destroying like feminism. Like,
no, like, let's say my past life. Jordan Peterson's past life, he was Tom Sowell.
oh, okay. Are you still alive? You're not, right?
I know, I'm just kidding.
Wow, okay.
But, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, they had the same kind of, like...
Yeah, I've seen a video of him. He looks so much younger. I'm not sure if a picture of him after. He looks so much younger here.
Right?
Yeah, he's kind of older. But yeah, guys, this is all we got for today, for you. We're not going to take your time anymore.
Unless you want us to.
Bye.
Bye.